TFA fam, how do ya do? Welcome in. It is Wednesday. We are consistent. This is a streak now. This is what you can expect going into the season, along with more live shows and everything else. But it's a Wednesday. It's TFA day. We might as well just rename Wednesdays TFA day because we're going to be coming at you guys live every Wednesday. Like I said, more days as well. But it's August, Kev. Another set of preseason games coming up. Drafts are around the corner. It's time for you guys to start researching, getting ideas into your head, names. What do you do if this happens and that happens? So we're here to hit you with the late round guys. So we have the 4-for-4 ADP pulled up. You can see that there are, 6 different sites, I think, that it pulls ADP from. They update these a couple times a week as well. So it's a nice resource to have, and we're basically just going to roll through and start talking about guys that that we are targeting once we get to these later rounds. So before we jump into it, Kev, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? How are you? How are things?
Going well. The grind is real. A lot of 2 a.m.s, a lot of 2 a.m. nights, but it's worth it because it's football season. The blurbs are coming fast, and hey, TFA made the old NBC's Edge blurbs. Where we got hit. So shout out to the three-time Emmy Award winner.
Yeah, if you guys have yet to check out those shows and you are a podcast consumer, make sure you head over to whatever podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, however you listen to your podcast. And make sure you are checking out the training camp dialed-in shows that David Berger has been doing for us this year. They've been absolutely awesome. Dave's crushing it. Had on Ben Baby from ESPN, who covers the Bengals. He was talking about Burrow and Mixon, and basically what he's doing is he's getting a hold of beat writers, talking to them about what is going on the field at training camp, and then putting the fantasy football twist on it. So it's been a lot of really good information. And like Kev was saying, one of the blurbs that came out was about Tyler Boyd, and then TFA got the little shout out for where it came from at the end. So that was pretty cool to see, and I'm glad that Berg is getting his due because they've been really good listens. So like I said, head over to the podcast, subscribe, and make sure you check those out because they've been awesome.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about them is they're really quick, short, and to the point. They're 15 minutes long, 15, 20 minutes at most. So, boom,
yeah,
actionable news for fantasy football. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that.
And Ben's was good too because he was actually putting the fantasy football twist on it as well. Like he was talking about air yards and why you want to go after Tyler Boyd in PPR leagues. Like it's cool whenever you hear the beat writers who actually understand the fantasy side to it as well. And it's not just, offensive line and, because there were a couple, I think last year where Berg would always end with give me your fantasy football hot take. And a couple of them would just be like, well, I don't really play fantasy football, but here's a bold prediction. So it's cool whenever, guys like Ben Baby and I think Zach Stevens, the guy he did with the Broncos as well, that was also a good listen. So it's all great. It's all great content. So Twitter, Instagram, podcast, TikTok, here, we're everywhere. Wherever you need us, we will be there. So with that out of the way, Kev, let's just jump into this. I'm going to give you the floor first. Obviously, we can see, 9 to 10.5 kind of here for 12-team ADP. Who do you want to kick things off? Who is somebody in this range that you are targeting?
Well, I think there's quite a few players that I have quite a bit of interest in. I'm going to start off. I still cannot believe Will Fuller is being as undervalued as he is, going off the board at wide receiver 39. 92 overall. It doesn't really compute to me for a player who is explosive as he is on an offense that should be much better than it was last year. And, as explosive as he is, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me why he's being so undervalued. He is starting to come up a little bit, but I think a lot of that is on Underdog over on the best ball streets, and it might very well be single-handedly by me because there's not many drafts I've left have not gotten Will Fuller, because I just think that he is somebody that 17, almost 18 fantasy points per game last year. So the disrespect, it will not be tolerated, Walito, in this here chat. There will be no disrespect of Will Fuller. Okay, I am a Will Fuller guy, and I'll take him all day at wide receiver 39.
Yeah, particularly in best ball, and especially with the news we've been getting out of Dolphins camp, where Tua is starting to look good. And imagine that. You give this guy extra time to heal from his injury. You open up the playbook for him, and he starts looking better. Weird. I can't imagine that's happening, and he's not looking like poop. This is my shocked face. I am shocked. But yeah, Will Fuller, wide receiver 39, like you were mentioning, I like that one as well. We touched on Damien Harris a little bit. I think he, in our running back sleeper video that we dropped, I think last week. So we talked about him. I don't want to dive too far into him, but seems like he is going to be the guy. He's the one who's getting the majority of the reps with the ones. Limited pass catching upside because obviously James White is still there. But if you're looking for like an RB4 at this range, toward the end of the 8th round in 12-team leagues, RB34, like that is a very fair price, and I am all about that. Is there anyone who is currently up on the screen that you're fading or you don't understand the ADP? Like for me, a guy that I'm just not interested in this range, especially at the end of the 8th, like Logan Thomas. Like I just don't get it with him this year. We were all about him last year. Every single week on the waiver wire show, we were saying, he should be the top one. He should be the top one for tight ends. But now you're talking about adding Curtis Samuel, adding De'Ami Brown, Adam Humphries there as well. Antonio Gibson's pass game role looking to expand. I think a lot of what we saw from last year with Logan Thomas was obviously volume-based, and I just don't see him getting the same amount of volume with the added weapons, the expanded role of Antonio Gibson. So he's just someone who just at the end of the 8th, that's just a little too rich for me. Like tight end 10, fine, whatever, but end of the 8th, and I'd rather kick the can down the road and get someone who maybe has a little bit more upside. Is there anyone that's standing out to you as far as a fade or someone else you like in this range as well?
Jaylen Waddle. Don't quite get that one. I know there are people out there that love some Jaylen Waddle, and I just feel like it's way too high for him, in my opinion. These guys, especially these burners, tend to take some time to develop. I don't know, what kind of a route tree they're going to be asking him to do. Is he strictly going to be a deep threat? Will Fuller's already there that can do that, as well as Devontae Parker whenever he's healthy. So just wide receiver 44 is pretty pricey for me. I would personally, I think there's wide receivers going after him that I would much rather have than him. I just can't see myself taking a shot on him. I would much more prefer, guys like Michael Pittman, who's going after him, who's going to probably start to rise back up the ADP board. Now we got news today that Carson Wentz is on track to start week 1. And then as well as Quentin Nelson is also on track to start week 1 as well against the Seahawks. So that should once again kind of rise their ADP back up. But none of these guys are going to go up that high. But I really love getting pieces of that Colts offense, because they're all cheap. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, that's it. That's the guy. That guy's the only guy that's going early. Everybody else is going much later. And, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, wherever you can get those guys, I'm about that life. So I love this offense. I like, if you really want to wait on quarterback, this year, if you really want to wait, I don't mind going Carson Wentz either. He's a guy that's a year removed from being a top 10 quarterback, in terms of ADP, that is now being drastically undervalued. So, we'll see here. Sounds like the surgery he had was fine. And like I said, he's on track for week 1. We had all of the the overreaction street with these guys where you can't stay away from Jonathan Taylor. You can't draft Jonathan Taylor now. You got to stay away from Carson Wentz and the offense and everything else. And we were like 5 weeks away from the start of the season, and people were already overreacting to it. And you saw it in their ADPs falling on underdog and everything else. You just get great value from it.
I am not fully fading Waddle. That price I think is fine. At that point, he's not going to be someone who makes or breaks your season. I think there's obviously a reason why they went out and targeted him. The early reports at camp are that they're kind of using him all over the place. Like, apparently he's been like unstoppable in like screen games, which again makes sense. Explosive guy. And he's also been playing outside receiver with getting some run with the amount of injuries at wide receiver that the Dolphins have had so far with Parker, with Preston Williams, Will Fuller not being there as well. So I think that is going to kind of help speed up and allow him to fit into different places. I am a little surprised to see that it's high, but I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it at that point.
In terms of the rookie wide receivers not named Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, who are the rookie wide receivers that you are most interested in?
Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, and then I feel like I have to say this since it looks like Christian is in the chat. I do like Terrace Marshall for as late as he's going as well. Like none of the outside of Elijah Moore, like none of those guys are shooting up draft boards either. So like they're all like very cheaply priced, and there's there's not really a lot of reason to fade away from those guys. But the top one for me is going to be Elijah Moore, but he also has the rising ADP with. I mean, he's one of these guys who kind of like Van Jefferson last year, where you can't go a single day without seeing something about Elijah Moore. So he's going to be my guy. We had the question on the live a couple weeks ago about like who do we see as like a Justin Jefferson kind of receiver for this year. And I just think because we also have to remember that Justin Jefferson wasn't being drafted with the expectation of the year that he had. So someone who's going a little bit later, my pick was Elijah Moore. I don't see him getting 1,400 yards, double-digit touchdowns like Jefferson had. But someone who's going later who could surprise and like next year is going to be going a lot higher than what he is this year.
I'm about that life. I am about that Terrace Marshall life. I have a ridiculous amount of Terrace Marshall in best ball. He is always sitting there in the 12th, 13th, 14th rounds. And I am just right there to scoop him up. I probably have 90% Terrace Marshall right now. I love Terrace Marshall, and I think that he is being undervalued. And I do think that he very well could be. And maybe it's not a Justin Jefferson type season because that is such a high bar to for any rookie wide receiver to get to. But I think he could have more like a DK Metcalf type season. I think is very well in the range of possibilities for him. And so I think people are undervaluing him, and he tends to be the guy that nobody is really all that excited about. And I just think that's ridiculous. I think it's wrong. There's no real tight, like if you really look at it, you have Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson there in that offense, right? And so past that, I mean, listen, I love Dan Arnold, and I love hearing all the Dan Arnold is out here balling in camp. Okay, for always and forever will be a Dan Arnold stan because of DFS and the year that he was like a 1% play and we hit on it. But regardless of that, like there's not many guys there, right? And so it's not like this overly crowded room. I think at the most, I think he could end up being third in the team in targets, if not maybe second. I think it's possible, not naming Christian McCaffrey obviously in that. And so I like Terrace Marshall, and it's definitely, in terms of what he was able to do in college, in terms of contested catch rate, what he was able to do in the end zone, like it's certainly possible that he has double-digit touchdowns this year. Like that is not like overly crazy either.
At his price, it really doesn't matter because if he doesn't end up working out, you drop him. The only thing that like has me hesitant on that is I feel like he's almost going to have to perform like a lower level tight end in that he's going to be dependent on his touchdowns to give us that fantasy upside. Like the double digit touchdowns are very well within the realm because who are they going to be targeting in the red zone? Like he's going to be that mismatch guy, especially if they're going to be plugging him into the slot the way that the way they did at LSU and the way that the blurbs are coming out now. I'm just not sure what his target ceiling is with all those other weapons around. So I feel like in terms of his fantasy output, it's going to be tied to his touchdowns, like the way that like we would almost be looking for tight end production in that way. But like I said, at this price, it really doesn't matter. You're talking about one of your last four, 3, 4, 5 picks. So like it really doesn't matter. But that's just the one thing that has me, kind of treading the waters, just dipping my toes in a little bit.
Like I said, I have a ridiculous amount of him. Rashod Bateman, we got news today with him that sounds like the injury is not as bad. At first, there was talk about possibly being a grade 2 strain, which would have put him out like 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. But now there's some sort of optimism that he might be back week 1, and so be ready by week 1. So that is positive. You don't want to see that obviously during the preseason and during training camp, but it sounds like he may have dodged a bullet.
Yeah, with Bateman, it sounds like he might be ready. Like they're not closing the door on him for week 1. Are you gonna be like in your just like your standard redraft leagues? Like where would you suggest people draft him? Like if they're gonna be drafting like in the next couple of weeks and not waiting until the end of August, beginning of September. Like would you suggest drafting him as like a round 13 kind of guy? Would you go earlier, or would you just suggest like maybe holding off and then picking him up off of potentially picking him off of waivers?
I mean, I have no problem with taking a shot on him in redraft leagues. I think that he is. I mean, it's a very real possibility he leads the wide receivers in targets. Like there's nothing hot about that whatsoever. First round pick, and I mean, Marquise Brown is Hollywood's hurt, already with soft tissue injury, and so I mean, who else is there? You have Tylan Wallace and Sammy Watkins, who is made out of paper mache and is hurt every single year. You can count on that. He's going to miss probably 6 to 8 weeks every year. And so, it's the real question comes down to it. It's all about really like, what do we think that the attempts is for this offense? Does Lamar Jackson actually throw the ball more like they've talked about all offseason? And that's the real question mark with this offense. And because if they do, and like, I think there's a possibility we could see 500, maybe 550 pass attempts this year out of him. And if we do, I mean, then that changes everything, because that's the problem right now with them is that if it's what we see every year, these last couple of years where it's, high 400s in terms of attempts, I mean, there's not a lot to go around. So there's not a lot to even be excited about with this offense. So if it does, then I think that we could possibly see where, Mark Andrews takes a big step forward this year. And, guys like Rashod Bateman can actually be fantasy relevant on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing, and I feel like they have to see if Lamar can take that next step as a passer. Like we saw what Mahomes got in his contract, we saw what Josh Allen got in his contract. Like even if you are of the belief that Lamar Jackson doesn't quote deserve it because he's more of a runner than whatever, those contracts are going to raise the contracts of everybody else, whether you like it or not. So if they're going to be dumping $250 million into somebody like Lamar Jackson, like they have to see if he can take that next step as a passer. So I'm here for it. I want to see it. It's just going to be interesting to see how much further those attempts go up. Let's go ahead and let's keep on moving down the list and take a look at some other targets here. I know we both like Tyler Higbee as a later round tight end. Like I said, we did the running back sleeper video. I know you're on James Conner. We already talked about, we both love Michael Gallup as well. Man, with the news that came out that the Cowboys aren't looking to extend him, I really hope he goes and gets a shot to be like a 1A kind of receiver somewhere else. But that's another discussion for another day. It seems like Irv Smith, his value starting to come back up a little bit after we had the blurb in the offseason that Zimmer was like, no, his role isn't going to increase. It's going to be the same, and it's going to be the I can't remember who the other tight end is, but like he's going to be the one who takes a step up in his role. But now we're seeing the most recent blurbs coming out, and that Irv Smith has been damn near unstoppable in their red zone drills. So obviously that bodes well for him. Pittman, we've already talked about. Marvin Jones, I think, is interesting. But let's start here with a couple of guys that I know that we like. We're getting some interesting names here, looking at it from the end of the 10th down to the beginning of the 12th here with 4for4's ADP. Talk about a couple of these guys. Who are you targeting? Who are you fading in this range from, let's call it 120. We don't really talk about Matt Ryan, but from Darnell Mooney down to Devontae Parker, Trey Lance.
Well, I'm all in on Darnell Mooney, and I'm starting to become more all in on McCole Hardman as well. Still have to. Mooney being the number 2 wide receiver in this offense, you're looking at basically him and Allen Robinson. They shipped out Anthony Miller out of town, which I don't know why they always hated Anthony Miller, but regardless of that, they don't really have a number 3 wide receiver. You're looking at like Daz Newsome as possibly being the number 3 wide receiver in this Bears offense. So I think that we could be looking at another 100-plus target season for Darnell Mooney, and he's going wide receiver 50. And so even if you're not in love, and I know there's people out there that are detractors of Darnell Mooney, and we'll talk about the fact that he is, wasn't that efficient last year and stuff like that, but I don't really care. If he's going to get 100 targets, like I don't give a shit. I think he can take another step forward. We're talking about a guy who was a later round pick, and but a guy that stepped up and was one of the better rookie wide receivers last year in a situation where not a lot of people thought he was going to be. And so I certainly was. Right after the draft, he was a guy that I liked pre-draft, and so I do like Darnell Mooney, and I think that wide receiver 50 is just a little bit too low for me in that range. And then McCole Hardman. So he has been getting all of the buzz in Kansas City. How well that he has done so far through training camp. Now, take that for what it is, but as of right now, he looks like he's the locked-in wide receiver 2 for this offense. They have talked about how he's taken a step forward with his route running, and they've been putting him all over the place. And so, before it was kind of looking like it was going to be a 3-team race, but now it looks like it's him. And right now, it looks like Byron Pringle is probably going to be the number 3 wide receiver in this offense, but McCole Hardman, explosive. If anything were to happen to Tyreek Hill, he pretty much takes over that role. So I like McCole Hardman. And, his ADP is funny because, like I said, on Underdog, I've just seen it creep up big time. I've been doing a ton of Underdog drafts, and, he's been going in the 70s on Underdog. And right now, if you look at everywhere else, that's just not where he's going. So I love McCole Hardman this year, though. I think taking a shot on him, early in the process, especially back in April or February or March, whatever it was. I was skeptic because of how he had performed and how things have transpired. But year 3, if he could take this step forward, this could be a big time steal going down here this far in the draft.
Yeah, it's also crazy just to note the difference with Mecole's ADP looking across from Underdog and then just down the line there. Obviously Underdog way, way higher on him than the rest of these sites that 4for4 pulls from, which is definitely something interesting to note. Talked about Gus Edwards a bunch. We don't have to dive into him here, but it's not just going to be the J.K. Dobbins show. Yes, Gus Edwards is going to have to split up touches with him and Lamar Jackson, but they love Gus Edwards in Baltimore, so he's definitely going to get some touches. He has standalone value, and the fact you can get him all the way down here, in the early 40s, 42. I think I'm looking at smaller font here. But either way, beginning of the 11th, I think he makes sense. And obviously, if anything happens with Dobbins, it's wheels up for Gus Edwards, because I don't think that they're all of a sudden gonna start to involve Justice Hill the way that they involve Gus Edwards whenever he's a 2. So I like him a lot. I think Jamal Williams makes a bunch of sense too. It's getting me like a little worried that we're still not seeing a bunch of DeAndre Swift. He's been nursing a groin injury basically since camp started. So that's something. And again, someone who I think has a little bit of standalone value. We know Anthony Lynn's history with using 2-back systems. There was everyone got scared whenever Anthony Lynn called Jamal Williams like a 1A kind of back, which was just his definition, not what we should have taken for fantasy, but everyone freaked out about that blurb. But we know Jamal Williams is capable. So he's someone I think makes a ton of sense, especially with where he's going here in the mid 11th round. Just to let's go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, while doing a bunch of underdog drafts, like the running back position is pretty thin. And when you get in like the later rounds, like there's not a lot to be like super excited about here in terms of some of the running backs that are going. Like once you get past like Tony Pollard and Latavius Murray and these guys, like you're really taking some darts. You're throwing some darts here on some guys. And so, like, it really does fall off. Like, where I always felt like in years past there was more running backs to have. But, like, if you look at where their ADP is going, a lot of these guys are going so early, it's pushing all the running backs so far up the board where you're not getting really tremendous value in the later rounds. And so, like Devin Singletary is disgusting to me. Like, I will have absolutely zero Devin Singletary ever, because I think that he is the quintessential Jag, and I just can't mess that. But like seeing guys like him down here, it's like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I agree as well. We got the super chat coming in from the GOAT Walito. Always appreciate you, man. Thanks for always coming through for us. What about Mike Williams? He's not a guy that I have ever really been on. I didn't really get the hype when he was coming out of Clemson, and he's obviously battled a bunch of injuries and whatnot. But the Chargers have talked about how they're looking for him to take a step forward this year. Walito is bringing up, if Allen gets hurt, Mike Williams having wide receiver 1 upside. I mean, that's if Mike Williams doesn't get injured himself. What are your thoughts on Mike Williams this season? Because like I said, I'm kind of interested with where he is going, but it's hard for me to fully dive in. 114 overall with the ADP that 4for4 has here, and 10.06 in 12 teams, and 12th round in 10-team leagues.
First of all, I love how Walito put if Allen gets hurt, which is really possible. Like he's calling for Keenan Allen to get hurt. Like it's just like a really possible thing. I mean, I don't know about that, but I am woo all aboard Mike Williams in 2021. Like it is an absolute disaster. How is he going wide receiver 47? We love this Charger offense this year. We talk about all the weapons that they have with Austin Eckler and this improved offensive line that could be the best offensive line we've ever seen. And somehow Mike Williams is going wide receiver 47. It doesn't compute. If we're talking about a guy who definitely has double-digit touchdown upside, that's Mike Williams. He's had a 1,000-yard season in his career. He's just never been able to put it all together. He's had a double-digit touchdown season. He's had a 1,000-yard season. He's just never done it in once, all in the same season. And the contract year never fails every year. He's at his 5th-year option. This is the year he has to, if he wants to get a bigger contract, this has to be the year. And so I love Mike Williams. And so taking him where he's going right now, like outside of underdog, of course, where he is, again, way higher than everywhere else. I'm telling you, underdog is wild these days with where some of these guys are going. Like you have to, if you want some Michael Gallup or some McCole Hardman or Mike Williams, like you have to really want it to make it happen. Because trying to pull off those Chief stacks with Mahomes and Tyreek and saying to yourself, well, I'll get McColl later. No, you have to really want him because the guys he is going around are in a tier above him. But regardless of that, I love Mike Williams, and I think there's a disconnect with where he's going versus where he should be. Because I think he should be going in the 30s somewhere, not high 30s, but probably low 30s. And it's just for wide receiver 47? Is that where he's going?
I think that's where it was.
Yeah. That's just
wide receiver 47.
So I just think that he is somebody that should be going higher than that. The ceiling is definitely there. Even if Allen stays healthy, I still think he has wide receiver 2 in him. If this offense really takes off the way that we think that it is, then there's no reason to believe that Mike Williams can't be a wide receiver 2. And I've also been taking shots on Josh Palmer. In case something happens, the possible number 3 wide receiver here on this offense. There's been some positive things about him. The former Tennessee Vol, of course, we, didn't expect him to do anything at Tennessee because Tennessee wastes good players. So, just like they did with Alvin Kamara. And so, you don't expect Tennessee to actually make any smart decisions. So, I think that he's a better player. And, he got that 3rd round draft capital. So he's also a guy that I think people should be paying attention to.
Christian, that is a very muted response to what I was expecting out of you from that. But yeah, I think he's finally at a point because for the first couple of years, there just always seemed to be that guy who loved Mike Williams and all the drafts I did, who was willing to take him much higher than I was. But I feel like he is starting to finally come down to a point where, like I said, I think I'm fine. I'm willing to open up my heart and let him in to my humble abode. Rolita was also bringing up Nyheim Hines as a nice best ball pick. He's someone else who I think makes sense in regular drafts too. RB44. He's obviously going to have the PPR upside. He's a guy who's been consistently used in the passing game with Indy, so I think he does make some sense there. And that is a very, very thin, very fragile receiving group that they have. We're super hyped for Paris Campbell. We have been for the past 2 years. If he goes down, then you have T.Y. Hilton. I don't think he is completely dust yet, but he's not the guy that he was. If he starts getting banged up, who do they have? It's Michael Pittman, and then it gets real sketchy. So I think Nyheim Hines is someone who could be forced into a larger receiving role. Maybe we see some 2-back sets or him used in the slot. Their hand might be forced because after that it's Zach Pascal, and the other guy who's been getting a bunch of hype is the 7th round pick they took this year, a D2 kid, Mike Strachan. I don't know how to say his last name. It's but Strachan. So he's someone in your deep dynasty leagues to pay attention to, but that gets in there with him. And I think, like I said, Nyheim Hines is someone who could see an expanded role. Kev, I am interested to get your thoughts on, we have a couple of rookie quarterbacks going here, neither of which are slated as of right now to have week 1 roles. What are you doing with guys like Fields and Lance? With their ADPs being where they are, I think that's kind of a tough pill to swallow, because at that point you are forcing yourself to take 2 quarterbacks, which isn't something that we necessarily recommend. But if you're drafting these guys at their respective ADPs, at the end of the 11th and beginning of the 12th, you have to take another quarterback, and they're going ahead of somebody, like Tua, who we know is a starter, been getting the positive buzz. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that in regular redraft leagues, you are not taking guys like Fields and Lance, but just your overall thoughts. Would you be willing to hold 2 quarterbacks on your roster and wait for the potential upside with guys like Fields and Lance, or you kind of out on them at this point?
I think it really depends on who you draft. And because I think that I don't mind taking a shot on Justin Fields because I feel confident. I mean, we are 100% confident Justin Fields is going to see the field this year. And I don't think we have that same confidence in somebody like Trey Lance. Like, we all love Trey Lance. If Trey Lance does start this year and play, like, we're all excited about that. But there's a real scenario that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't get hurt this year and plays good enough. I mean, the weapons are there that he's able to play kind of like an Alex Smith type season, and Trey Lance doesn't see the field. And so, like, I don't think it's a gamble and redraft. You want to take a shot on him late, fine. But the problem is that he's not somebody that's going to see the field, barring an injury, outside of a couple of weeks. It's not like he's going to be in a couple of weeks. All right, cool. He's going to be the starter, right? So you're just burning a roster spot in a bench space for him. And so I don't think that's something you could do. Like, if it was me, somebody's going to draft him and they're going to hold him on their team, and they're going to when waivers you really get going and bye weeks get going, he's going to get dropped. And I would much rather just kind of start paying attention and watching. If it looks like Jimmy Garoppolo is struggling a little bit, then maybe go out and try to pick him up or something like that. But I wouldn't burn a roster spot and a bench spot for somebody that very well couldn't play this year. Now, Justin Fields, on the other hand, is a different situation because I feel like there's probably a better than 50% chance that he's the starting quarterback for the Bears by week 4. I just don't think Andy Dalton is it. And so I would, if I'm going to take a shot on one of those two guys, it's going to be Justin Fields, just because I feel like that, the opportunity is there. But again, crazy good things have happened. Andy Dalton could play well for the first half of the year, and maybe Justin Fields doesn't see the field. They've been adamant that they want this to be like a Patrick Mahomes type year, which is the dumbest thing ever, because Andy Dalton is not Alex Smith by any stretch of the imagination. So, like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But, we'll see what happens here. But, if I was going to take a shot, it probably would be on Justin Fields.
And the other situation I want to get your thoughts on as well, the New England tight end situation. Are you really targeting either of these guys? Like, if you were forced to draft one, like, who do you like? For me, it's Jonnu Smith, just because I feel like he's a little bit more of a dynamic player. Hunter Henry is nursing the shoulder injury right now, but apparently it's nothing that should put his week 1 status in jeopardy or anything like that. But I was so pumped when I think Jonnu got signed there first, correct? And then Hunter Henry came after. But, like, Are you excited about either of these guys? Are you targeting either of them? And then, like I said, if you had to draft one of those guys, who is getting the Kevin Steele stamp of approval?
It'd be Jonnu for me. I'm just going to go with a guy who's more athletic, and Hunter Henry's already banged up. Now, it doesn't sound like it's anything super serious for Hunter Henry or anything like that, so that's good. But it would definitely be Jonnu if I'm going to take a shot on either one of these two tight ends. And I could see them kind of moving him all over the field, using him more as a wide receiver than just a tight end. Even though I will say that he is a very, very good inline blocker. So if they wanted to use him there, they could.
It's so crazy. Like, I guess it's not crazy, but it's just jarring to see Evan Ingram down here at tight end 17, below, the Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry that we were just talking about. Like, that's how the mighty have fallen. Let's keep things moving. Obviously, Latavius Murray, another guy that Kev, you mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of, like, how thin the running back position gets. He's obviously a guy that I like a lot. A couple defenses starting to come off the board. Adam Troutman, absolutely somebody like we were talking about with Logan Thomas. I would rather take Adam Troutman all the way down here at the end of the 12th round versus taking Logan Thomas at the end of the 8th. Like if I'm going to wait on one of these guys, I'm going to wait. Like, I'm not going to take a Logan Thomas at the, like I said, in the mid rounds at the end of the 8th. Like, that to me just, I can't get down with that. I'd rather just take somebody like a Troutman, look at the tight ends who have, a promising week 1 matchup, and then just play the stream game all year long. But he's somebody who I like a bunch. whenever Marquez Callaway is the receiver who's getting hyped up, look around at some other options there, because Traquan Smith has apparently been missing some time. Obviously, there's all the drama going on with Michael Thomas. Alvin Kamara, isn't going to be able to handle 250 targets, even though right now that kind of looks like that might be their best bet. But Troutman is the guy I like. Kev, I know last year you were on the Russell Gage train in terms of being like a, very end of your draft kind of guy to target. Now, obviously, he's thrust into a more prominent role with Julio Jones out of town. But is Russell Gage down in this area, wide receiver 57, end of the 12th? Is he someone who you are looking at, or you kind of, because I know that like after digging into it a little bit more, like you weren't as excited as you thought you might have been initially. End of the 12th, or are you going after Russell Gage there?
I'm actually surprised his ADP is not higher than what it is, because just
weird.
the pure opportunity that stands before him. Anyway, I mean, even with Julio Jones last year and being the number 3 in this offense, like he still wasn't terrible last year. And for an offense that's going to have to throw the ball a lot, I mean, he wasn't as consistent as you like him to be, but he started out last year at 20.4, 16.6, and then he kind of fell off for 3 weeks, and then 10.5, 11.4, 12.8, 15.1, 18.8, 17.8, and a 25.2 to end the year. But really, once Julio Jones left in the second half of the season, is really when, I mean, he started to do much better and much more consistently, where he had double-digit fantasy points in 4 or 5 of his last 7 games. And so I'm surprised that more people aren't on that aren't on him, and that his ADP isn't higher than what it is, because I mean, he's a guy that's probably going to see 100+ targets at least. And, he's been relatively productive when given opportunities. And so I'm surprised that more people aren't, drafting him. And it's just, I don't know if people are just like, it's the Falcons, Julio Jones gone, they're going to be terrible. But this defense is still going to be really bad in Atlanta. And so they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And so, if this offense can be even more efficient with Arthur Smith in town, kind of what he did with the Titans, I think he could end up being a really tremendous value. Like, he's not somebody that has like wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 upside, but I think he could be a really solid weekly wide receiver 3/flex type guy, depending on how many players you start. And so, Calvin Ridley's obviously the alpha, and then Kyle Pitts is the number 2. But I do think Russell Gage is being undervalued for what I think the ceiling is for him. I mean, how many guys that are going in this range have probably locked into 100+ targets? I mean, none that you can want right now 100% say this guy's getting 100 targets.
Yeah, I mean, in this range, Bateman potentially, but like I don't think you can lock him in for 100. I wouldn't be surprised, but he's not someone who, if Tom and I were doing a prop show on, someone who I would throw money down on. But it's weird. I think we initially thought that he was going to end up going like 8th, 9th round because of Julio leaving. Russell Gage was the guy who we definitely pegged as being the next man up, and his ADP has not gone up, which is like I said, definitely a strange occurrence. And there's someone else who we're going to touch on who fits the same bill a little bit later at a different position. But now we're starting to get into starting to see some more defenses pop up. Getting a little grosser, getting deeper. But this is
the Daniel Jones disrespect right here. What was that QB 25? The disrespect for my guy Daniel. Just disgusting. You know how much Daniel Jones I have in best ball?
I think that's a number you should keep to yourself.
It's 0, actually. It's 0. The number's 0. Yeah. I've just never had the opportunity. Like, every time I usually take a quarterback early, and then by the time I go to take a second quarterback, it's usually like Carson Wentz or Matt Stafford or Jameis Winston, guys like that. But as you're scrolling through, there's a few names that stand out to me that not named Daniel Jones that I think would be interesting to talk about. One, I think if for me this year, if I'm going late round tight end and I'm passing up on the top 6 guys, I'm going to wait all the way until I get right around this range, and I'm going to take somebody like Adam Troutman for sure. I think at least for the first 8 weeks of the year, we could talk about him being the leading target getter, not named Alvin Kamara. He's going to be a monster in the red zone. So I love Adam Troutman, but I also think Cole Kmet could be an interesting name too here, going super late. If you want to take a flyer on somebody, take a stab at somebody, I do like Cole Kmet. He has been getting some positive buzz out of camp. So I do like taking a shot on him as well. And how about AJ Green? Are you buying into the AJ Green hype that we're hearing in Arizona? Because if they're making it sound like he's back, right? Like AJ Green has been playing very well, looks really good. Like, I don't know, maybe he was just trying to get out of Cincinnati, because I know he wanted out of Cincinnati. Like, he was not happy that he was franchise tagged, and I know this is all narrative. I have obviously no way to prove this, but like, he wanted out. We knew this. We knew he was not happy about being there, and so I don't know. We're hearing all these positive reports. He's got Kyler, DeAndre Hopkins on the other side, and he's going like wide receiver 62. Like, I really have no problems if people want to take a shot on AJ Green to see what he's got. He's free. If he doesn't work out, you cut him, right? But I think that there could be some fantasy goodness here in AJ Green.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you just said is the most important thing. He's free. I mean, you're talking about going at the end of the 14th round, wide receiver 62. If he doesn't end up working out, you cut bait and you move on. You pick someone else up. But it is going to be interesting to see what he can do whenever he is not the focal point of a passing defense, right? Because that's been his entire career with Cincy. Like, he was the dude, the guy getting all the attention. And DeAndre Hopkins had a quote recently where he kind of threw some shade toward Larry Fitz and toward Andre Johnson, where he was just saying, like, yeah, I play with those guys at the end of their careers, and he said he still thinks that AJ Green has some gas left in the tank, and he's not dust the way those other guys were. So it is going to be interesting. Like, even if he has a little bit left in the tank, I'm here for it. I hope it happens. But like, wide receiver 62, I don't think he necessarily has to be a target of yours per se, but I am very intrigued to see what he can do. Like I said, whenever he is not, getting the double teams, the bracket coverage, and all that, because obviously that is going to DeAndre Hopkins. But you said the most important part. He's free. If he doesn't work, you cut bait.
I will say, he was truly terrible last year. 104 targets,
not great, Bob,
but only 47 receptions, 523 receiving yards, 86 yards after the catch. That is almost really hard to do. A 1.03 yards per out run, which was 99th among all wide receivers. There is not a single metric that I can find to even try to prop him up, except for he was third in unrealized air yards. That's about it. And seventh in deep targets. That was it. Like, he played 82% of the snaps, 104 targets last year. He ran a route 87% of the time. And so it wasn't a thing like he wasn't on the field or he didn't get an opportunity. An 18% target share, 47 catches, 523 and 2. So, it's different for me because I'm normally the guy that's like, no, I don't want no part of these dudes that are old and, the guys that were past their prime. But I do think that, if he can, maybe he has got one more year left in him. And a much more, especially when we're talking about the fact that Joe Burrow got hurt last year, only played about half the year, so he was without him as well. So, but I will say that AJ Green, I think if you want to take a shot on him, I don't hate it.
Well, Lito has a question here before we move on to some of these deeper names and make our way down this ADP list. But we obviously talked about the New England tight end situation. What about the wide receivers? Obviously, they went out, kind of, I guess, revamped their wide receiver core with the spending spree that they went on. But do you have any interest in any of the New England wide receivers at all this year?
I will say I don't understand why people aren't higher on Jacoby Myers than they are. He, had kind of a little bit of a breakout last year. He didn't get any touchdowns, so that that hurt him a little. But he still averaged 11.7 fantasy points per game for somebody that didn't have any touchdowns. And we know touchdowns are the most volatile stat year to year, so it's not really anything you should really be paying that much attention to. But he was really efficient. I mean, we talk about somebody who was not efficient in AJ Green. Jacoby Myers was extremely efficient, 2.41 yards per route run, which was 8th among all wide receivers. And then, he was also 15th in target separation. And so Jacoby Myers, again, it's just like everyone's like, no, I don't really care about that guy, and I want no part of him. And I get it. This is a run first offense, but I don't think Nelson Aguilar is better than he is. And I mean, he had 59 catches for 729 yards last year, and he had some really big games last year. He just didn't find the end zone. But that passing offense last year was absolutely anemic. With Mac Jones, I think that he's another guy that I think that is going to, probably start before, probably a Trey Lance is going to. We could see him, sometime week 6, week 7, or mainly probably after the Bucs game when the Bucs just absolutely stomp a fucking hole in the Patriots, because that's what Tom Brady's going to be going up there for, his revenge. And so I think you see Mac Jones, which he's looked pretty good in camp so far. I wasn't a guy that was super high on Mac Jones, but I do think Jacoby Myers should be on more people's radar as well. Like he was somebody that was really efficient last year and played much better than anybody thought he was ever going to. And he averaged double-digit fantasy points last year on an offense that was terrible. Yes, it still is a run-first offense, but I think that he kind of proved himself a little bit last year. And like I said, none of the guys they added should be somebody that you should be worried about him not getting an opportunity.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like a headache to me. Like I feel like this is whenever we get to the waiver wire portion of the fantasy season, like those are both going to be names that, like, we end up like flip flopping back and forth on the waiver priority kind of thing. It's just such. I think the entire offense is kind of up in the air, because going from someone like a Cam Newton to a Mac Jones, like, couldn't be two more different quarterbacks to go from one to another on. And then just, going out of your way to get the two tight ends of note that they got, like both very prominent NFL tight ends. Like, I feel like it's almost one of those things where, like, the Patriots are just trying to zig when everyone else is zagging. Like, everyone else is going to 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, spreading the field, and it seems like the Patriots are like, well, we're going to go and get our guy back from Las Vegas. Then we're going to bring in the two tight ends. Like, it kind of seems like that they're like going to like they're going to rewind the clock almost. So it's just one of those offenses that just, like, I think we're just going to be beating our heads against the wall and kind of having the wrong guy each and every week. Another question here from Walido. What about Gerald Everett? This is another one where I just, Will Dissly is apparently healthy again. We know that Seattle likes him. Obviously, they went out and got Everett this offseason. Are you interested with Everett at all? Is he someone that you're kind of looking at toward the end of your drafts?
I mean, if you're going to take a shot on a late round tight end, make sure it's somebody who's athletic, and he has that. Finally the Seahawks decided to bring in somebody that wasn't dust at tight end, like Greg Olsen last year, and just keep taking shots on these old has-beens. So I if you want to take a shot on Gerald Everett and a Russell offense, I'm about that life, and I think that he is somebody that was always kind of blocked by Tyler Higbee, and then you also have guys like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. But now, I mean, he's probably the number three guy in targets this year. I mean, I think that he is going to be the starting tight end. I don't think that he's going to be God. They're gonna ask to block and all that stuff. I just don't think that that's him. But I think he's somebody you could line up all over the field and use in a don't know, make no mistake, those two are going to be still the guy who's going to lead this team in targets. But I think Gerald Everett, can be a useful tight end, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes as the low end tight end one this year. It's really possible. Because I have said that I feel like that this Seahawks offense is being a little bit undervalued because of how badly they finished last year. I think that we could look back and be like, this was the year they let Russ cook, because it feels like that is coming.
I hope. I just want to see it for the entirety of a year, not having Pete Carroll get in the way of that. As we're closing in on an hour here, let's go ahead and start to wrap this up with, some of these deeper names. First of all, Elijah Moore. I don't know why he's not showing up with an underdog ADP. You are absolutely not getting him in the 16th round of a 12-team league. He's going to end up going in that 9-10 range, I would assume, by the time that things are said and done. I think Anthony Firkser is another interesting, late round tight end name if you're going to go that route and just play the streaming game. Jalen Reagor kind of seems like he's finally starting to step up a little bit in Devonta Smith's absence. Just touched on Gerald Everett. Are there any other names here as we're scrolling down through the list, Kev, that are standing out to you? Any of these names that you want to touch on?
Why does everybody hate Sterling Shepard is what I want to know. What has Sterling Shepard ever done to you for people to hate him as much? He's still only 28 years old. I mean, he averaged almost 13 and a half fantasy points per game last year. He was, in terms of, he was a wide receiver 3 on the weeks that he played. Of course, he only played in 12 games. But regardless, I just don't understand 66 receptions, 656 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's not somebody that's going to be a mega producer or anything like that. But again, once you get to the bye weeks and you're looking for somebody to, bye week fill-ins, I mean, he had multiple games last year where, he was definitely usable. I mean, 17.9, 15.4, 11.7, 13.8, and a 22.7 week in 12 games last year. In PPR formats, if you want to take somebody a little bit later, I think that, I wouldn't be mad if you had him as your wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, something like that, depending on how many roster spots you have to take. Granted, I'm just definitely much more of a guy who I'm just going to be shooting straight for upside, and I probably wouldn't draft Sterling Shepard. But I do think Sterling Shepard is being in PPR formats being a little bit undervalued compared to what the ceiling is for him. Because, again, wide receiver 4 is now the range of possibility for him, and he's going much later than that.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like the Evan Ingram corollary as well, with him going as low as he is. Walito, I'm glad you said it. Obviously, I am biased. All jokes aside, I couldn't have said this more perfectly. Even if you want to do he's going to end up getting hurt. At this point in the draft, it doesn't matter. And in such an ironic twist of fate, as of right now, Sammy Watkins he's been getting the hype to begin with. He's been getting the hypes going all the way back, to many camps in that he has been Baltimore's best wide receiver. Maybe not saying much, but either way, it doesn't matter. He has been their best wide receiver. And like I said, in just such an ironic twist of fate, he is also their only non-injured wide receiver right now too. But wide receiver 70, if you were able to get a team's potential wide receiver 1 in the 17th round at wide receiver 70, you got to do it. There's another guy going right after him as well. Just to go up to, we already talked about Rondell Moore a little bit. He's somebody who I also like as a maybe more of a boom bust kind of guy, but he's been getting a lot of glowing reviews at Cardinals camp as well. We all know how I feel about Amon-Ra St. Brown. We both love Paris Campbell as well. But again, that Amon-Ra St. Brown, outside of Hawkinson and Swift, who do you really feel like is going to be, getting the targets? And that's going to be a team that's not going to be playing from ahead, going to be forced to throw a bunch. It's not like Jared Goff is a guy who's going to sit back there and just be, taking deep shots after deep shots. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown makes a lot of sense as well. Anybody else in this range, Kev? Anyone else that you want to touch on that maybe I pass by?
Well, I love Paris Campbell. So as much as I can talk about him, I'm going to continue. And it's, wide receiver 72. I suspect that's going to rise along with the guy that I've been looking for. Now I see where he's at, and it is just disrespectful. Terrace Marshall, wide receiver 77. Stop. That is not what round 23, round 19. There is no way he is going to be by the time we get to late August. This is just disrespectful. Not even being drafted in ESPN. Underdog is going at 126. I think that is a really fair spot, and that's where he is going to end up going. This wide receiver 77 nonsense for Terrace Marshall is ridiculous. Let's talk about Bryan Edwards. Like, he has been getting a lot of buzz in Raiders camp, but that's what John Gruden does, is hype these guys up and gets us all fucking, the juices flowing. We're excited. We're like, let's fucking go, John. Let's go, John. We're ready. We're ready for Bryan Edwards. And then the season's going to start, and he's not even going to hit the fucking field. So, are you excited? Are you still on the Bryan Edwards bandwagon? Are you still riding? Are you still rocking with Bryan Edwards?
The dynasty player in me will always go talent over situation, but John Gruden is making that really hard to do. But Bryan Edwards was also getting the buzz last year too, and it wasn't just from Gruden. There were beat writers who were hyping him up. Derek Carr comped him to Devontae Adams and having him at Fresno. So the talent is there. The opportunity is there. But John Gruden is also there. So it again, at this price, I think last year, Jesus, I might have had him at I think I might have had him ranked as like a wide receiver 3. Obviously, you're not having to pay anywhere near that sort of price. And last year, through the first, I think he got hurt week 3. I want to say week 3, week 4. Through those first couple weeks, he was leading the Raiders wide receivers in terms of snaps and snap share. So he was on the field. He just didn't have the targets to show for it, and then he gets banged up. We had the COVID year and all that stuff. So I'm at the point with Bryan Edwards where I want to see it on the field. I was all about it last year. Then we were getting all the blurbs, all the news, all the hype. You were with me as well. We were talking about, I don't care that Henry Ruggs was drafted, 10th overall. Bryan Edwards is going to be their wide receiver 1. And it was looking like it was going to come to fruition. And then everything else ended up happening. But again, wide receiver 80, there are worse wide receivers. Like the fact that Christian Kirk is going ahead of him doesn't make any sense to me. Like, give me Bryan Edwards over Christian Kirk 80 times out of 80. Like, some of these, like, why is Pat Freiermuth going ahead of him, going right behind Terrace Marshall as well? Like, a couple of those just, like, do not make sense to me. Are you going back to the Edwards bandwagon? Because I know that I was leading, but you were right behind me. You were like in the co-captain chair. Are you buying back in, or are you kind of where I'm at?
When I calmed down, I got a little excited there. I got a little excited, with it, and I got to bring it down a little bit. But I still am. Like, hey, it's year 2. Like, I don't care. Of course, he didn't have a great year, okay? But he was hurt. He's been balling this in camp. The question is can somebody not named Darren Waller become, a thing? I still think he's better than Henry Ruggs. Like, I still don't think that's hot. There's nothing hot. Not like Henry Ruggs did anything last year either. They're letting all of a sudden Nelson Aguilar come out of nowhere. Hey, they got that man paid, though. They got Nelson Aguilar paid. Good for them. But yeah, I still think Bryan Edwards is really talented, and I don't mind if you want to take a little shot at him, late in the draft. If you have, your league, 12-team league and above, and you have 6-7 bench spots, you want to take a shot on Bryan Edwards, I don't mind doing that. Like, he has the talent. I mean, the guy's breakout age is absolutely ridiculous. The highest we've ever seen, 17.8, 100th percentile breakout age for our guy Bryan Edwards. So I don't mind taking a shot on him. Like, these are the guys that once you get down here and once you're like, last couple picks in your draft, I know I talked about Sterling Shepard to those guys, but I would never take those guys. Like, I'm taking Bryan Edwards. Let me take a shot on him. Okay? Like, I got no problem with a guy like Bryan Edwards. Because I think that, if he hits, I think the upside's there. If he's not, you're just going to drop him. I've talked about Jerick McKinnon. Give me a shot on him. I think there's something there that he possibly could be the guy that is gets 35, 40% of opportunities in his backfield and is going to be a pass-catching threat. They're going to use him in space. And, paired with Andy Reid, I have no problem taking a shot on a Jerick McKinnon. Xavier Jones. This is also wrong. Like, I don't know how Xavier Jones, 22nd round. Like, one, people don't have 22nd round, so he's pretty much going undrafted.
Right.
But if you look on the best ball sites and the FFPC, which is where, a lot of high stakes stuff happens, he's going at 158 and underdog 179. I, again, have taken him in probably every single draft that I've done. He's sitting there as my 5th running back that I usually take an underdog. And I think the upside's there for him as well. Like, I know everybody's kind of probably waiting. Like, oh, they're going to sign somebody. They're going to sign a veteran. They're going to bring in a veteran. Well, until they do, like, I think he could be the number 2 running back in this backfield. And so I like taking a shot on him because I think this is going to be a committee. I don't think this is going to be something where Darrell Henderson gets 80% of the opportunities in this backfield. And so I think he carved himself out a pretty decent role here. And, if something were to happen to Darrell Henderson, which has been something that Darrell Henderson has struggled with, is staying on the field. Woo, we could be talking about Xavier Jones season here. And he's absolutely free right now.
Yeah, this is the one I was alluding to earlier with the Russell Gage, the same thing where we're kind of expecting, that ADP to rise because, he's the next guy up. And then you have McVay coming out as well and basically saying that they aren't planning on giving Henderson, loading him down with touches the way that they were with Cam Akers toward the end of the year because they're worried about him staying fresh and they want him to be able to stay healthy for the entirety of the season. So that they aren't going to be giving him all those carries. And then the only one who's been getting the consistent hype, from McVay and from some of the other beat reporters has been Xavier Jones. So that one is just one that does not make sense to me. I'm surprised that his ADP hasn't been rising. Like you said, maybe people are waiting for, a trade or a signing or something like that. But again, and especially in best ball leagues, if you're taking him in the last round, like it's not gonna kill you. So he's someone who I really like targeting toward the end of your drafts. And just to bring this all together, maybe this is the last one we'll get out on with here because you were already talking about guys like McKinnon, Dan Arnold, all the way down here. It starts to get pretty gross, and unless like you're in like a 16-team league, you're not going to be looking at a lot of these guys anyway. But let's bring it together for Christian holding down the chat, for Walito holding down the chat, maybe somebody they can meet in the middle, shake hands on. Let's talk about the kid from University of Tennessee, Marquez Callaway. Is this a name that you are interested in? Because we already talking about the Saints offense a little bit. Marquez Callaway has been getting all of the hype, which shouldn't be surprising considering none of the other receivers are at camp right now, whether it's Michael Thomas and everything he has going on. Traquan Smith has been missing time too. But is Marquez Callaway someone that you are intrigued by?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely somebody that has potential this year. Didn't really get many opportunities last year, but I think in this offense I don't know what's going to happen with Michael Thomas right now. Like, it's not sounding good. Like, we kind of heard some of this last year where he kind of did some of this. Like he is suspension. for somebody that has like one, like there's no way anybody, like I don't know the whole story, but it really seems like, because it never made sense to me, like how the hell did he not have the surgery sooner? Like how did he have it in June? And like there was the reports out there that he like ghosted the Saints for a couple of months and everything else, and like I don't know if he's trying to miss time. Like I don't know. Like it's unbelievable to me, because like do they trade him? Like there's talks about them possibly moving him, but then that contract, I just don't know how they'd be able to do that, because I haven't looked at it, but I'm sure there'd be a ton of dead cap because they signed him recently. And so, slant boy, but they're going to be a team that has to sign, I would think, another wide receiver, right? Like when we get some cap cuts, maybe they bring in Denzel Mims, right? We've heard some speculation that possibly Denzel Mims could get traded, and maybe Denzel Mims gets traded there to the old Saints. But yeah, I don't mind Marquez Callaway. I think he's fine. I think he's somebody that could end up again, being a guy who gets 100 plus targets this year just because of necessity, because he's the only guy. Like Traquan, we've been waiting to break out for what seems like forever, and he has yet to do so. And he's already not starting off the best, and so I don't mind taking a shot on a guy like that. So I really don't mind that. But this Saints situation has gone, like, this used to be like the prime, like especially DFS, like we're targeting Saints games because especially in the dome, like the Coors Field of the NFL, right? Like love targeting the Saints. Now it is gonna be tough. And like honestly, like I was really high on Jameis, but like I don't think they're gonna play him, because it would seem to make the most sense for them to play the tight end that they have at quarterback, Taysom Hill, because of what you could do with him, because he's a run, because the threat he is, to run the ball, and I think that just makes their offense a little bit more explosive to do that. So whereas before, like I think I would have felt better if Michael Thomas was playing and all these guys were available, that they would go with Jameis. But now with where this offense is, I don't know if they do go with Jameis. I don't know if I feels like maybe more so they go with Taysom because of necessity and because what he can do and be dynamic and move the ball down the field. So I think it might be more Taysom Hill, who is a guy that nobody's drafting right now, but it could end up being a Konami code quarterback. I've held on, I've held the line, I've held for as long as I could on Jameis, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It seems like it's going to be Taysom Hill. So, we'll see there, but yeah, I mean, I don't look, so yeah, I don't mind taking a shot on that, but man, this offense does not sound all that enticing. I mean, we really could be talking about right now, is the Texans offense better or is the Saints offense better? I mean, you have Alvin Kamara, which obviously, is better than anything the Titans have or the Texans have, but past that, I mean, I guess at least the Texans have, maybe Nico Collins could be a thing. I mean, Anthony Miller's there now. They have 47 running backs. That used to be good.
Yeah, I just took funny you mentioned Anthony Miller. I just took him in the last round of my most recent underdog draft. I was just looking around. I was like, could do worse. You could do worse. And he's been getting some good praise and some hype, like basically since he got there. Which again, that measuring stick probably isn't very high, but that's someone who I know that we have liked since he came into the league, and just for whatever reason never really panned out with Chicago. But yeah, I literally just took him earlier today in the last round of one of the puppy tournaments.
Yeah,
but let's
what?
No, go ahead.
So, I will say this. Well, I have a question, but the first thing, before we get to that question, I want to ask you this: what are your thoughts on Jacob Harris, the hype that's building in the Rams? We've seen them utilize two tight ends before, but like that would really cap like Tyler Higbee, right? We were all excited about Tyler Higbee and like being with Matt Stafford, but I mean Jacob Harris looks like, again it's training camp, and so like it's hard, like you try to like, okay, step back, it's just training camp, they're not like this is a real game. Like some of the stuff that he's doing out there, like some of the plays he's made are pretty damn impressive. Like, he looks like he could be a force. So what are your thoughts on the old Jacob Harris hype train?
I think he is a nice dynasty stash, but unless Higbee goes down, I don't know. Because we also have to remember with this team last year as well, like, you literally could not go like one swipe on the old Twitter timeline without seeing some Van Jefferson buzz. Like, we thought this dude was basically locked in for for a Hall of Fame jacket. Like, get him fitted now because he's just crushing everything. Harris is really interesting, and he's actually a name that got on my radar when Robbie and I did the pro day recaps. Because you're looking at this guy, and he's an athletic freak for his size. He played wide receiver. I can't remember, Vanderbilt maybe. I think he was. I think he was at. He was actually a goalie for soccer, and then he was a walk on for the football program. But like Christian is saying here, a nice dynasty stash, especially in your deeper leagues, or if you're in a tight end premium or a 2 tight end kind of league, I would add him there. But I think it's still going to be Higbee, and for seasonal leagues, unless Higbee goes down, I like the hype. It's nice to hear that, like, after digging into this guy, he is getting some run early in camp, but maybe he ends up being a waiver wire guy. But I think the target tree and the target distribution is pretty well set with the Rams.
I mean, you look at it as like you go to real player profiler and look at his workout metrics, and it's like you go
Athletic
from 6 to midnight immediately, because like he has a 99th percentile 40-yard dash, an 87th percentile speed score, a 99th percentile burst score, a 100th percentile agility score, and a 99th percentile catch radius. I mean, the guy is an athletic freak, and an 18.0 college yard per reception, but he has a fucking terrible breakout age of 23.4, which is a 2nd percentile. But regardless of that, like, the athleticism is definitely there. So I am always going to be intrigued by guys who can run, who are athletic, and especially at tight end. So I don't know. Like, I think, and he was a 4th round pick. It's not like he was a guy, and for a tight end, I mean, that's not that bad draft capital. That's not like he was a UDFA or anything like that. So listen, I mean, he's certainly not somebody you're going to take a shot on and redraft. I will say that, but he's that guy that, like, I want on, like, the guys that you should be paying attention to and know who they are. So if something happens to Tyler Higbee, you should be let's just go ahead and take a shot on Jacob Harris to see how he does, because because he very well could take over as the starting tight end if something were to happen to Higbee.
6'5", 220, and a sub 4.5 40, which is just absolutely bonkers. Let's hit on Ashton's last question here, and then we will get we'll get out of here on this one. This is a guy who I've been taking in the last round of some underdog drafts as well. But Kev, I want to get your thoughts. Malcolm Brown. Obviously, the hype has been surrounding Gaskin. Apparently, he's been looking good. Savon Ahmed has been looking really good as well, bringing some speed. But I do think Malcolm Brown could be the short yardage goal line work. I don't know about the passing game, Ashton, but goal line short yardage for sure. What are your thoughts on Malcolm Brown? Then we'll wrap this bad boy up.
I don't hate him. I think that, again, he's probably a guy that you could take a shot on. I do think Myles Gaskin is going to be the guy and is the guy, and I think that Myles Gaskin himself is probably being a little bit undervalued for comparative, because he's going like in the 20s, I think, something like that among the running backs. But I don't mind it, because I mean, I definitely think that he could be the guy if something were to happen to Myles Gaskin, and at the very least the goal line short yardage back guy. And this offense was productive in terms of in the running game, so I don't mind taking a shot on somebody like that. And speaking of taking a shot on somebody, I want to ask, this is about the question I was going to ask, like, who's one guy, like late guy, that's like not on anybody's radar right now? Just a name, that you are excited about, or that you think that could end up having some fantasy relevance this year that nobody's really talking about?
Real quick, just before we pass on, Malcolm Brown, would you draft Brown or Ahmed?
It would be Brown.
Okay, but he probably, like, I don't think there's any reason that you have to.
I wouldn't draft. I probably wouldn't take either one of them. This is one of those backfields that, like, I feel like that if something were to happen to Myles Gaskin, I don't know if we know who the guy would be, right? Like, I don't. So taking a shot on him, like, it feels like one of those situations where we always, like, there's very limited running backs that I feel like that, like, I know if something happens to Zeke, I 1,000% know that Tony Pollard's going to take over as the lead back, right? And that, okay, if I have him on my bench, that I know that, right? But there's a lot of running backs you could take a shot on and all of a sudden be like, that you think he's the guy, and the next thing you know, he's not, and it ends up being somebody else. Like, we always think we know when it comes to a lot of these guys. Like I said, there are very few that I feel that way about, that you absolutely can lock in that is the guy, that is the handcuff to own. Where in this situation, it really wouldn't surprise me if it's Brown or Ahmed. Ahmed looked decent last year as well whenever he got opportunities when Myles Gaskin went down, but then they went right back to Myles Gaskin. But, I think that, because of Ahmed, I think maybe he possibly could have a higher ceiling just because we don't really truly know. But Brown feels like he probably has a safer floor. And if something were to happen, but again, I don't know if we really truly know. So, but if I had to take a shot on somebody, it'd probably be Malcolm Brown.
As far as your question, it's so hard for someone that's, like, not on anyone's radar, because I think we need to change the term sleeper, because I don't think the way that it was originally defined really exists anymore. But I'm gonna stick with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, like, people know who he is. They've heard the name, but he's still going super, super late, and he's someone who I, especially in full PPR leagues, I think we could be looking at like a discount Jarvis Landry. He's not going to be a guy who is super dynamic and to do a bunch after the catch, but in that offense, he should be looking at at least getting close to triple-digit targets, and the fact you can get a potential team's wide receiver one or the triple-digit targets kind of almost locked in. Because let's say Swift gets, let's say he gets 100. Let's say he gets the triple digits. Let's say Hawkinson gets 150. There's 250 targets. 250 targets in that offense right there. They're going to throw another 200 plus times. So there's going to be plenty of targets to go around, and I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy who I am keying in on in the last round of drafts. Kev, do you have a guy who you're targeting?
I don't know if I would say it's targeting. Like all the guys we talk about, would be guys I would target, but I'm talking about just something that people should just really just kind of monitor. And I think that for me, there's a couple of guys, but like I think Donovan Peoples-Jones could be that guy in Cleveland, but I think it's DJ Dallas that nobody's really talking about whatsoever. Like Rashod Penny still isn't healthy, and they're still talking about he's getting right. And he's in the last year of his contract. And so, but DJ Dallas, when he got opportunity last year, the only game he got last year that he played, the majority of the snaps, where he played 80% of the snaps last year, he 22.8 fantasy points, third among all running backs that week. And he didn't really get much of an extended opportunity, but, guys like Carlos Hyde is gone. And if Rashod Penny goes down, and, Chris Carson has not been a model citizen for health. And so DJ Dallas could end up being an absolute league winner this year. And so nobody's talking about him because he's not sexy. He's not somebody that's like, that jumps off the page at you or anything like that. But I just think in this offense that we know that they want to run the fucking football, but that I just think DJ Dallas with Rashod Penny, in last year of his deal as well, that could end up being a guy that really pays off later in the year.
Yeah, and he's already gotten some hype as far as like being a potential like pass catching back for them as well. Man, for someone that like no one's, I don't think I have a name like that to pull out of my hat, but I think that is a good pull. I mean, someone we just talked about, Jacob Harris, kind of paying attention to. Obviously, there's no reason to draft him with everything that's going on with the Rams, but I
Could
will
have said
still.
I could have said Noah Gray too. That was also an option.
Yeah, good call, Noah Gray.
Because
I mean, I guess
he obviously needs an injury. He would need an injury to Travis Kelce for him to ever be relevant because the Chiefs don't really utilize two tight ends all that much. And I mean, he could see some opportunities in inside the red zone and stuff like that. We've seen it back with some other guys. They had Demetrius Harris that they would do that for every once in a while. But if something were to happen to Travis Kelce, no Gray could. I mean, he's gotten a lot of buzz out of camp. Like he's somebody I talked about. Like Travis Kelce talked about him and said that, of course, this is what players say, but said that he thought that he was better than he was at this point of his career. Whenever he was a rookie, and so yeah, I mean, Noah Gray is somebody that, again, people should definitely know the name if something were to happen to Travis Kelce.
I guess another tight end just to throw out. He hasn't been getting any buzz. I haven't seen anything with him, but I think Brevin Jordan can make some sense. They need guys who can make plays in Houston, so I think that is another name to keep in mind as well. Hopefully, he starts to get some hype because I have not seen anything on him, and like Nico Collins could be another guy as well to pay attention to. J. Mike, we love to see you in here. Always makes us happy. Looking fresh in that Avi. Look at that, the serious face. That has to be part of his modeling collection. I would have to assume.
His voice is like silk, right? Like it's like the Morgan. I always say he's like the Morgan Freeman of the fantasy community, like with that voice. Like he could just do like voiceovers for everything. Like Morgan Freeman does a lot of that. Like he could definitely do that. Like it's silky smooth. Like yeah. So
I would pay an absurd amount of money to have him as like going to sleep. Just that, like plug in the headphones and he just like he walks me into the shut eye and into getting some Z's like that ASMR. You know what I mean? Like getting J Mike on an ASMR kind of thing would like.
Are you talking about the people that like talk really quiet? They're like, and they make all these noises and all this stuff that's supposed to like help you? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they like whisper, whisper shit.
That like fucking freaks the shit. Like I had no idea what it was. I don't know what people are talking about. Then all of a sudden I saw it on TikTok. Someone was doing a live, and I'm like, what is wrong with this person? Like, what are they doing? And then so I started looking into it. Like, it really like just like weirds me out. Like, how does this help? When people are like, like I'm making noises. Like, it's fucking weird, bro. Like I'm like, what is this? Like, I have no idea. Like, how could this come for people? Like, this, like, weirded me out. I'm like, this is way too fucking much for me. Like, get out of here with that. Like, I'd rather listen to, like, a babbling brook, or birds in the forest or lightning or whatever.
Babbling brook. There it is. There, the fact that you just pulled that. Let's hit these last two real quick. One more answer. Which Dallas tight end would you prefer?
I think it's going to be Blake Jarwin.
That's who I like as well. And then Walito has asked this 4 times. I was going to close this out, Walito, and then go to the end of the show. He wants to know, DGen Pod, when are we coming back? When are you guys coming back?
Tomorrow night, Walito. It's already the show's already scheduled for tomorrow night. And go check out the thumbnail because it is mint. Like I was really proud of it. I was really excited about it when I did it. The DFS DJ Nation comes back to you tomorrow night. We are back. We're going to be looking at some week 1 pricing, and me and Matty Buckets, Matty 2v2, as Ryan would say. We're back tomorrow, so we're getting you ready for week 1. We're not that far away. So it's time to start looking at the DFS, and we're gonna win win the Millie this year. We're going to take down the Millie. I feel it coming. One of us is going to take down the Millie this year. It's happening.
There you have it. Appreciate you guys joining us. Jump into the Discord. Make sure you are liked and subscribed over here on YouTube, and make sure you check out the training camp pods that David Berger has been doing. Those have, like I said, those have been awesome at the top of the show. So we appreciate you guys rocking with us. Another hour and a half live stream in the books. More coming at you all season long, and we will see you guys on the next one.